On May 11th, 2011, 6-year-old Timothy James Pitzen was dropped off at a school in Aurora, Illinois, by his father, James Pitzen. After dropping off his child, James would head to work. At around 8:15 a.m. that morning, Timothy's mother, Amy Fry-Pitzen, would arrive at the school to pick Timothy up. She would inform the school of a family emergency and proceed to take Timothy away with her. Later that afternoon, James Pitzen would arrive back at the school to pick up his son. But to his shock, he was told Timothy had already been picked up earlier that day by his mother. James would try numerous times to reach his wife, but the calls he made kept going to voicemail. The following day, James filed a missing persons report, while Amy and Timothy began a 2-day trip to the zoo and numerous water park resorts. 3 days later, on May 14, 2011, Amy Fry-Pitzen was finally located in a hotel room in Rockford, Illinois. She had apparently taken her own life, leaving nothing more than a cryptic note behind. As for her son, well, Timothy Pitzen was nowhere to be found. This is the story of the bizarre and tragic disappearance of Timothy James Pitzen. Welcome to The Cellar. Timothy James Pitzen was born in Aurora, Illinois on October 18, 2004. He was the only child of James Pitzen and Amy Fry-Pitzen. Timothy was described by those that knew him as being an extremely happy, outgoing child. He loved what most 6-year-olds love, things like playing on the playground, going to school with his friends, and much more. On May 11, 2011, Timothy and his dad James hopped in their vehicle and began their typical trek to school. The day felt like many days prior as James pulled up and began dropping Timothy off. According to his father, Timothy hopped out of the vehicle, told his dad that he loved him, and began running towards his awaiting teacher. James had no idea in that moment that this would be the last time he would see his son, Timothy. James proceeded to work from there as Timothy went and settled into his classroom. Not long after, at around 8:15 a.m., Amy Fry-Pitzen, Timothy's mother, would arrive at the school. She would proceed to the main office and inform the school that a family emergency had occurred and she needed her child brought to her for dismissal. Amy and Timothy would leave the building, beginning a chain of events that would haunt Timothy's entire family for years to come. Later that same day, James Pitzen would arrive back at the school, expecting to see his son and talk to him about how his day had went. But to his shock and dismay, he would be informed by the school that Timothy had already been picked up hours earlier. James would confirm with the school who picked his son up, and he would immediately get on the phone and attempt to contact his wife Amy. But every effort at reaching her would be sent straight to her voicemail. James wasn't overly concerned at first. He felt confident that Timothy was at least safe with his mother. From all reports, the couple had been going through some marital issues recently, and James presumed his wife was just upset with him and decided to take Timothy away with her to go do something for the day. But as the day turned to night, and the night turned to the following day, James became more concerned. He had yet to hear a word from his wife at this point, and so James proceeded to call in a missing persons report to the Aurora Police Department. The police immediately entered Timothy's name into a national database of missing children, but they did not issue an Amber Alert. The reason being that Timothy was with his mother and was not believed to be in any danger. Also at this point, Amy had not committed any kind of crime, so the police did what they could, and the search for the pair would begin. Based on information collected by the police, Amy and Timothy would first travel to the Brookfield Zoo on May 11th. Following their trip to the zoo, the pair made their way to the Key Lime Resort located in Gurnee, Illinois. The resort is described as a 65,000 square foot aquatic playground that has something for all ages to enjoy. On May 12th, the pair soon headed off to another water park, the Kalahari Resort. The Kalahari Resort is located in Wisconsin Dells, Wisconsin, and is known as Wisconsin's largest water park. The indoor water park is listed as being 125,000 square feet. Prior to checking into that resort, video footage was obtained of the pair stopping along the way. They purchased clothes, a toy car, and a small craft kit at a convenience store. They also purchased gas and drinks off Interstate 94. On May 13th, Amy and Timothy would check out of the Kalahari resort. The police obtained video footage of the pair holding hands as they checked out and left. This would be the last video footage of Timothy and Amy together. After they left the resort, the pair would begin driving south on Interstate 39 and then west on Interstate 88 towards Sterling. It was at this point between 12 p.m. and 1:30 p.m. that Amy would finally make some phone calls to family members. She phoned her mother and brother-in-law. From what's reported, the conversations were normal in nature, and family even heard Timothy in the background. Amy would assure them that they were safe and not in any danger at all. Timothy's father, James, was never called or contacted in any way during this time frame. Once the calls came to an end, Amy drove about 170 miles towards Sterling, along the Rock River, about 80 miles west of Aurora. She then abruptly turned her cell phone off for the last time, making her next moves impossible to track. Later at around 7:25 p.m. on May 13, 2011, cameras would capture Amy at a Family Dollar in Winnebago. Winnebago is located just west of Rockford, Illinois. At the dollar store, Amy would purchase a pen, some notepaper, and envelopes. She would then travel to a grocery store at around 8 p.m. In both videos of her movements, Timothy was nowhere to be found. Following these two stops, a handful of hours would go by before Amy proceeded to check into the Rockford Inn in Rockford, Illinois. While in the hotel room, Amy would write a note before proceeding to consume a large amount of antihistamines. At some point that night or during the next morning, Amy would take her own life by using a blade on her wrists and neck. Her body would be found the following day at around 12:30 p.m. on May 14th. Left at the scene was a note, and within that note it read, "Well, some people leave notes, some don't. I couldn't decide, so this is my version. Tim is somewhere safe with people who love him and who will take care of him. You will never find him. To whomever finds me, sorry about the mess. Amy." Now, before we dive any further into this case, let's give a little bit more backstory into James and Amy. From my research, Amy was someone that had been battling with depression for quite some time. When she met James, she had recently gone through a divorce with her first husband. This divorce had really shattered her world and had left her in an extremely dark place. It seems like James really tried to do all he could to help Amy. But what some people don't realize with someone battling depression is that you simply can't just fix them. I've battled with depression my entire life. Since I was around 15, 16 years old, it has been something that I have learned to manage and work through, but it is not something that ever just fully goes away. It finds new ways to manifest in your brain, and even when life is seemingly in a good place, it doesn't take much for it to feel like the entire weight of the world is once again resting on your shoulders. Amy was constantly battling this, and it got to a point where she had attempted to end her being in 2003. When Amy finally got pregnant with Timothy, it's been reported that she was the happiest that she had been in quite some time. Having Timothy and becoming a mother gave Amy a new purpose in life, and she absolutely adored her child. But as I stated prior, the dark cloud can come back without warning, and I am no doctor, but it appears Amy's battle was a chronic one that sadly ended up getting the best of her in the end. Let's go ahead and talk about some more info on Amy and James' relationship. This info I think helps shed a bit of light into Amy's mindset. From what has been stated by James, he had found on his wife's phone that she had gotten back into contact with her ex-husband. Texts and calls were found, and this really upset James. Up to this point, James had tried to give and be everything that Amy would need or want, and finding that she was back in contact with her ex really broke him. This did cause him to lash out at one point, where he told her that if she wanted to leave or go be with someone else, that she could go and he would take custody of Timothy. From my research, it's believed that Amy was extremely fearful of losing her son. Given her past battles with depression, she felt like James could potentially divorce her and take full custody of their child. This ultimately may have planted a seed in her head that just kept growing until she felt like she had no choice but to do something about it. Now, before you all say what a terrible husband James is, I think it's important to point out that interactions like this can happen in any marriage. If anyone found their significant other speaking secretly to a former lover, Well, I think many of us may react in some sort of a similar manner. From my research, I think James wanted nothing more than his marriage and family to work out and stay together. Now, we only know what's been said and reported, and we don't have a way to rewind and see how their marriage truly was. Given that Amy is no longer alive, it's impossible to get her insight into what was truly going on in her life and in her head and in her marriage. Now let's go ahead and dive into some more information within this case. Forensic reports found that the knife Amy had used contained only her blood, but there was blood found in the back seat of the car Amy was driving. The police stated that the amount found was concerning, and it did come back as being Timothy's. Following this revelation, family members would come out and inform the public and police that the bloodstains found within Amy's car were believed to have been Timothy's from when he had suffered a nosebleed earlier that month, not from an incident occurring during the pair's fateful final trip together. Police would also find that Timothy's backpack, as well as the toys and items purchased on the trip, were all missing. Amy's cell phone was also missing, but in 2013, it was finally located alongside the road on Illinois Route 78 north of Mount Carroll, Illinois. It appeared the phone had been thrown out of a moving vehicle. This break in the case had police hopeful that they would be able to piece more of the puzzle together, but sadly, no new evidence was discovered within Amy's cell phone. Police would go to great lengths examining Amy's vehicle. After looking at and analyzing the dirt and grass found on the underside of the car, they were able to reveal that the car had been parked at some point within a grassy area, possibly near a stream, but still close to a highway. This information helped the police come up with some ideas of where the car may have been, and many searches would follow. But sadly, no sign of Timothy or what may have happened was ever found. Another piece of information that may seem small, but I will come back to when we talk about theories, is that of the set of clothes Amy was last wearing when she was last seen checking out of the resort with her son. This set of clothes was not found in her car or hotel room and has yet to ever be found. I think this piece of information can point in a darker direction, but we'll get to that shortly. One last piece of information I found interesting was that of Amy's iPass. Amy had an iPass on her car, and this device reads what tolls you go through and then bills you later on. Where I lived in New York, it's called Easy Pass. Down here in North Carolina, they call it NC Quick Pass. Now, this iPass was never located, but records from it showed that earlier that very same year, Amy had made 2 trips to the hotel where she died. It also showed some of the other more rural locations she visited on her fateful final trip with Timothy. From what's been reported, there was never any apparent reason as to why Amy traveled to any of these rural locations. This information ultimately led police to believe that this final trip with her son was very well pre-planned months and months in advance. Now, the search for Timothy was very extensive. They performed numerous searches throughout Illinois, and the case would gain national coverage with Timothy's picture being shown consistently on TV. Now, I won't dive into all of it, but there were reported findings of Timothy over the years, including a massive hoax that hoax was absolutely a despicable thing to do, and those involved ultimately paid the price for what they did, and to this day, no new evidence has ever been found within this case. All these years later, Timothy is still missing, and his father is still waiting and hoping to one day be reunited with his long-lost son. Now we will dive into theories on this case. The 2 most obvious we will cover first. Either A, Amy found a family or someone to give Timothy to, and they have been taking care of him since, or B, Amy took the life of Timothy prior to ending her own. Now, looking at both objectively, I think it's easy to say both are very plausible. Amy was clearly not mentally well, and the idea that she may take her kid for a fun-filled final couple days before ending it all seems completely plausible. Was the dirt and grass found under her car a sign that she had found a place to bury his body? It certainly could be. There are numerous hours between the final phone calls Amy made and her being spotted at a dollar store. It's easy to say that there would have been plenty of time for Amy to commit such a heinous act. At the same time, Amy left a note and stated that Timothy was in the care of people that loved him. Why say such a thing if he wasn't still alive? Now, the idea that Amy found people to take Timothy is something I could believe, but I also question whether or not he could be cared for and kept hidden for all this time. This story gained national news coverage, and you would think that someone would have spotted the boy by now. But in the same breath, there have been cases where people are found decades later, so I don't think it can be ruled out one bit. One piece of information people lean to in order to support Theory B is the change of clothes that were never found. Amy changing her outfit and disposing of it could have taken place after the crime had been committed. Perhaps she got blood on her clothes and ultimately didn't want anyone to know what she did to her child. I think given her mental state and what she ultimately did to herself, this theory is extremely plausible. Now, let's look again at the theory that she gave Timothy away to someone else. I watched a very well done video by Nick Crowley on this story, and within his video he brings up a theory about Timothy not actually being James's son. When James and Amy met, James was battling cancer. James ultimately overcame the cancer after numerous chemotherapy treatments. A side effect of chemo can be infertilization in men. When Timothy was born, the couple viewed this as a miracle. But some have theorized that maybe this wasn't what it appeared to be. Some believe that Amy may have actually gotten pregnant with another man, and ultimately Amy took Timothy to his real dad to be raised secretly moving forward. Now, this is just a theory, and not one with a lot of information to back it up, but I did find it to be very interesting, and nonetheless, I wanted to mention it here. The police went through Amy's cell phone once it was found, and they located an email account she secretly had, and nothing was ever found indicating she had prior contact with anyone about taking Timothy. The fact that nothing has ever been found is puzzling, and to me, it makes it hard to believe that she just gave Timothy away. But another interesting thought I looked into was that of the Amish. I saw this idea touched on and thought it was also very interesting. The idea is that Amy located some Amish people living within that area of Illinois. Now, as far as I know, the Amish don't have to register their children or send them to public school. So in theory, she could have given him away to be raised up within an Amish community. The Amish are more off the grid and don't typically get involved in watching the news or having Facebook or YouTube or any of that. It's completely plausible that Timothy could be raised within their community and stay hidden all this time without anyone knowing any better. For me, this theory is extremely interesting, but once again, we don't have a lot to back it up. If I had to pick a theory that I would like to believe in 100%, it would definitely be this one. This one would make sense as to why Timothy has never been found, and would also make me feel better as a parent knowing Timothy was still alive and doing well. Out of all the theories we touched on, I'd love for this one to be the actual answer to this puzzling story. Now, I asked the hardest question. Could Amy have taken her son's life? As of this moment, we still have zero evidence to support things one way or another. Aside from that blood that was found within the car, there's nothing to say she did that, and many believe the nosebleed is what ultimately caused the stain found within the vehicle. I myself, like many, would like to hang on to the hope that Timothy is still out there somewhere in the world living his best life right now. What we know is that Amy was in a clearly dark place. It's clear she wanted to give her son an amazing 2 days between the zoo and water parks. It's also clear that Amy wanted to leave this world, but she did not want to leave Timothy with his father. Why she was so opposed to this idea, we just don't know. Could James have been abusive? It's possible, but we have nothing to back up that idea. It has now been 13 years since Timothy was last seen or heard from. I ask that you keep your eyes open, and if you have any information that can help in solving this case, I encourage you to come forward now. I will share a phone number in the description box below that can be called. I will also take a moment now to share an age progression picture of what Timothy may in fact look like today. So what do you all think? Let me know in the comment section below what your thoughts or theories may be on this case. In sharing this story, I hope we're finally able to find some answers as to what happened to Timothy James Pitzen. Thank you for tuning in to another episode. If you enjoy the content, please hit that like and subscribe button. It helps the channel continue to grow. Also, if you want to make sure you don't ever miss a new upload, you can turn on the bell notifications after you subscribe. In the description box below, you'll find a link to my merch store and a link to the Cellar Dwellers membership tier for the channel. If you're interested, please take a moment to check those things out. If you'd like to submit your own scary story or a story recommendation, you can do so using the email linked in the description box below. And as always, I do all the research, writing, recording, and editing for the channel myself, so anything that you do to support this channel is greatly appreciated. Until next time, I will see you all again as we head back into
The Cellar.